I think with AI, we have the opportunity to do what a lot of people would call themselves product developers would do, which is the output is the software that users use, not the code that lives on the server.
Welcome to the How We Work podcast, where we go from idea to impact. Every episode, I sit down with a guest in and around product teams to explore how they actually work across the product delivery lifecycle, how they discover, define, and deliver value. We talk about their rituals, how they collaborate, and how they scale their ways of working. And of course, the role that AI plays in shaping all of this. This is not a hype or highlight reel, it's just the real stories of what works, what doesn't, and what our guests are experimenting with. Now, I'm excited to welcome Łukasz Sągol to this podcast. He's head of engineering for intelligent workflows at Miro. He's been here for 4 years. He's been in the tech space for ages already. He's been a co-founder for his own whiteboarding tool previously. And next to thinking deeply about the future of engineering practices, he's also just a wonderful human being. Lukasz, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Lovely to be here.
Now, I'm lucky enough to have known you already for a while. You've been very generous with your time. But the one question that I try to ask all my guests to just get to know them a little bit differently is about their user manual. The concept is pretty simple. Imagine you had a user manual that you could just give to everyone to understand how you work, what they need to know about you, your quirks and your pet peeves. And that can be anything from throwing a tantrum because people are not folding the milk cartons when they throw it in the bin, or to not being able to give a clear answer because things are complex and there is no clear black and white answer. What would your user manual say?
That's a great question. I love it.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of what comes into a user manual like that, it comes from, the background, the history that we all have. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of where I come from, I originally studied software engineering, and that is my trade that I know the best, even though I might have not been doing it as much lately. I've been always dabbling in computers since a very young age. After my studies, I very quickly realized that just writing software it's not enough for me. It doesn't excite me. I can see how, different companies that I work with building things that might have not always made sense for the users. So I get very excited about figuring out what can you do to make sure that the things that we invest in actually, deliver the expected outcomes or the value that we want. Then from that, a quick journey. I went to a great consulting company in London that taught me all about the lean startup ways, the kind of validating things, the user research. And that then the natural step for me was co-founding a company. And I think that shaped the most of what I would put in my user manual. It's less my personal user manual. It's more what I want to have around me, what I believe is valuable as a group of people to come together and kind of to work in a certain way. And there's not really that many things. I think the things that I always value is shipping fast. I want to believe that you can only learn truly about what people want by actually getting something out there, getting them to use it, and then observing that. That's the best way. We can do some user research up front. We can try to do some desk research. We can do some validation and data. But in reality, the goal should be to go into with a product as quickly as possible. And as a result of that, there's a thing that I don't like, which is kind of the opposite. I'm really allergic to people having beliefs that they have never had a chance to test or validate. I don't like when we make decisions just because we assume that something is happening. We assume that, engineers don't like this or that, so we're not going to build software for them. We assume that there's certain type of collaboration that designers want to do, so we're not all of these things are possible to learn about. And I always try to get people to do that, to not just operate on things that they believe to be right. As I said, I'm a builder, and I quite often get the feeling that I try to be too hands-on. I have too many opinions about how a certain thing should work, what should we be doing? And I'm still trying to learn to kind of be a responsible manager and step back and give people a chance to, sometimes make mistakes and not get it right, because I am also fully aware that I am not right all the time. So that's kind of like the main things that I think about when you ask me this question.
So when you get a new engineer in, what's the 5-minute version that you tell them about how you actually ship new capabilities? What's the product delivery life cycle in the over coffee version in 5 minutes that you get them across?
5 minutes. That's very tight. There's probably a lot of steps that have the values prescribed, and there's the like how I see it. And this is what I'm gonna try to explain. Hopefully I'm not gonna forget about any of the important
We're
steps.
just here for your opinion.
We have a fairly like standard, I think the names might be different, but I believe that by now most organizations work on a similar kind of cycle of agreeing on the kind of value of the investment, or like should we be even looking into this, which in our case we call kickoff. And I believe, again, a very important step. Like it's very difficult to disagree with something when the team has already spent 6 months building it, and this is the right time. Like if getting to a kickoff should be a fairly quick activity of describing what we believe is the value that we can deliver and what the opportunity is. And that's just for quick validations. Like, do we, as an organization, do we agree that this is important for us to look at? As an organization, do we believe this is important for us to look at right now? And then we move to a solution review, which again, this is probably feels like a big journey from, oh, here's the opportunity, here's what we actually want to do. But we try to compress that. Like the solution review doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be, finalized, pixel perfect designs of what the engineer is actually going to start working on. A more general idea of, this is where we see the kind of how that opportunity can be expressed in the software that we're building. Then we go to pre-release, which is the like reality check a little bit of, here was our solution. What are we actually gonna give to our customers? What are we actually gonna give to our users? Because if we don't spend a lot of time pre-solution review on investing and validating all the approaches, we're gonna do it as we're building it, which means that there might be some drift between the solution and pre-release. But what's even more important is again, agreeing on why are we releasing the software, what is the group that we're releasing to, and what are we looking to learn from it, which I believe, again, being the most important things to agree. It's less about, what colors the buttons are. It's more, if we give this new feature to this small group of beta users, we will learn whether they even are interested in finding out about it. And then the one that I believe people maybe don't always value as much, and that probably happens purely because of the fact that there's always so many different things to work on. But the post-launch review. So we did the release. Maybe there are some small iterations that we did while already in the market, trying to fix some things. But it's time to kind of come back and have a look at, did we find out the things that we wanted to find out? Did we validate? Did we manage to capture that opportunity that we talked about in the kickoff? And what is the next step? Should we continue investing in this? Should we potentially kill it? Or should we just let it run for a little bit longer and maybe do another post-launch review in a few months? And I think that's kind of captures it's not very, I don't feel like it's a very unique approach, but I feel like it's very concrete in very right places. So it makes sure that, as I said earlier, we do not invest too much before we agree that this is the right thing to invest in. We don't just like add buttons to our UI for every single thing that people are working on. We actually try to centralize it. And it's less about decision making, it's more about centralizing the general approach, right? and make sure that we, in the end, we try to learn from it. And a lot of those steps for most projects actually end up being shared asynchronously on a Slack and then reviewed in that way. And I think that actually the mode of it makes a big difference. A synchronous meeting naturally feels like it is heavy. It needs a lot of people to be at the same time in the same place. And if we just able to share it asynchronously, a quick 15-minute version of my kickoff, the biggest value to get out of it is if someone disagrees, there's a way of saying, no, stop, let's look at it closer. But also, if it's okay, we just carry on. We don't wait. We don't wait until we found a space in calendar to schedule and then, probably reschedule because someone had to cancel. There's no ideal set of people that need to review it. We just trust the process that if I publish this kickoff, and by the end of the week no one said no, it's fine, we can carry on. Most probably I'll carry on as soon as I published it, and it's okay. And I think that allows us to kind of move much faster than we would otherwise.
I love that you call out that they're often just async alignments where teams have gone through this process a couple of times, like, hey, we know what we're doing here, this transparency. If anything is fundamentally wrong, call it out, but otherwise we'll just press on.
And I think it's like, it sounds dreamy to, be able to sprint all the time and just launch things quickly. We are, a gigantic horizontal platform with so many users. We can't just be, continuously adding buttons to the toolbar or changing the UI completely. We need to have some kind of recognition of the fact that people are using this tool for their work every day. And if you suddenly change it massively, it's going to disrupt their work. It's going to slow down everyone. So that's why, we're more in a game of a marathon than a sprint, even though sometimes we do have to sprint, or we're allowed to, to rush with some particular aspects of it.
Okay, let's make it a bit more real and get into a real project, a real example. Like, talk to me about something where you went through this process on a real project, and what were the tension points across the PDLC? What did you learn?
Yeah, great. I actually have two examples come to mind, but let's go deeply into one, and then we'll figure out. So we've just launched into public beta our MCP server for Miro. MCP is the technology to allow agentic tools to talk to each other, to use each other's tools to communicate. So you can use Miro inside of your ChatGPT or whatever else. And as we started this general project, the big risk there was it feels like a platform. It feels like the kind of, you're building API for all of the tools that are available on Miro. The initial thought of that is, if we want to do it right, we need to expose as many things as possible. This probably would have been a project that would still be running if it wasn't for the fact that, and actually this is one step that I forgot to mention, that we do have in our PDLC process, but it's been a fairly recent addition. Before we start everything, before we start with a kickoff, we have a brain dump, which is we kind of gather a group of people that we believe could have very helpful opinions for the project that we're working on. And if we're building a feature for that's supposed to address designers, we would invite the design leadership team or senior ICs or whoever else that we believe will have that useful context. It's kind of like internalizing some of the user research up front before we even get to a point of like, we see this as an opportunity. In this case, we knew that we want to build MCP server. There was a lot of community MCP servers built already, and we felt like we want to be able to represent what we believe is the right way for those agentic tools to utilize Miro. And as I said, we started the project, we went straight into brain dump, and thanks to that, we managed to kind of create a concrete scope of why are we interested in this project. Out of talking to our CEO Andre and our CPTO Jeff, we realized that in the market and throughout our customer base, people are very interested in MCP, particularly for the reason of delivery. Like that's the part that they find the most interesting. The engineering teams want to figure out how they can use MCP with Miro to help them deliver software. And that automatically meant, okay, outside, rather than trying to build the most universal tool that would allow everyone to do everything on Miro, we have this very narrow scope that we now can figure out what are the best examples of kind of the integrations that we can build. So, very simple 1 hour session helped us probably shorten the project from 12 months to like 2-3 months, which is amazing.
So I love the framing around the brain dump. Like it sounds like what it is. The tin is like, just tell me everything that's in your head. I understand it correctly that it's mostly about underlining the design principles for this, the overall organizational context that's been shared then with the leadership teams.
I think this is important, by the way, because I feel like whenever people talk about the ways of working, about the processes, people get too focused on like, oh, I need to make sure that I get an approval. I need to make sure that, if I want to do something that we haven't done before, everyone in the company agrees. When in reality, that's not what you want. You don't want people to be feeling like, oh, if Jeff doesn't sign off on something, I cannot do this. No, it's more, let's agree on the rules of engagement, agree on why we're doing it and what are the biggest value they want to get out of this. And then it makes much easier actually for teams to feel like they have the independence, the agency to make decisions, because they have the boundaries.
Talk to me about the cross-functional aspect of the product delivery lifecycle. I'm particularly curious to hear more about the impact of AI on the PDLC, how that changes your interaction with your peers. Let's get a bit into that.
Absolutely. I think we're very lucky at Miro that we do have, like, by default, everyone uses Miro as a tool to do their work. Like if I have an idea, my first go-to is going to be type in the browser miro.new to open a new Miro board and just, put a few notes. And the reason why I think this is lucky is because we end up in this world where a lot of our context lives on Miro. Now, as we launched some of the features over the last 12 months, we kind of make it easier for people to organize those kind of cores of a team around a collection of content in Miro. Thanks to that, as a cross-functional team works together, they automatically have that kind of shared space, which is actually called a space, where all of the content lives, whether it's in Miro, whether it's embedded from different platforms, doesn't really matter. But what's great about this is that the main thing that you need to do to be able to talk to your engineering, design, or product counterparts is finding that shared language. So if I'm trying to explain to my product counterpart that something is impossible to do because of technical limitations, a big architecture diagram probably will not help me communicate that. So I need to find a way of kind of finding that language that they will understand. And because we have that space with the shared context, I understand what is their knowledge, their beliefs, what is the things that they're hoping for. And I feel that AI is super powerful in that situation. So if an engineer has a great idea, if they wanted to communicate it to the designer, they can spend an hour in a meeting and describe it. They can try to sketch it, but that's most probably outside of their comfort zone. That's also kind of like, might feel like encroaching onto designers' safe space. Like, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I'm not going to do it. But now with AI, the kind of the line to cross to be able to create something that designer can react to is so much smaller. Like you can do it very easily. And because we have that shared context, it's all already there. So I think this is what becomes the most powerful. As a cross-functional team, we can now kind of find that shared part of our roles and kind of maybe not push each other, but inspire each other to do something differently. An engineer can come up with a creative solution to the problem and share it with a designer by generating a prototype. And it's much easier for designer to react to that versus to a 60-minute meeting or 30-minute meeting where they have to listen to someone trying to explain something that's not naturally part of their profession.
Yeah. Okay. That's really interesting. You talk about shared context is much easier to obtain with AI as a cross-functional group, and sort of translating into what makes it really relevant for everyone. But you also talk about the sort of Venn diagram of the typical functions in a product team actually get, there's more and more overlap coming through with the democratization of craft, and engineers can do prototyping and designers can push code. In reality, though, what happens in the teams when you suddenly work with a designer that's pushing code? Is like, hey, can you approve this PR? Like, how does the dynamic change in these teams then suddenly?
Yeah, I think there's still the kind of protectiveness around everyone's role, and I feel you're right to say that the Venn diagram is going to become closer and closer. But I think actually maybe what's going to happen is that the circles of the Venn diagrams are going to become smaller and smaller, and we're going to find a new circle in the middle that's like the shared skill, the shared ability. So every single role is going to have a more concrete definition. We're going to find what is the like nucleus of a designer that no one else in the team can actually do, and what's the nucleus of an engineer that based on the experience, based on the knowledge, they find it the easiest to do this one thing. I don't know, for engineers, I can imagine that's probably going to be like technical systems thinking, like the innate understanding of what we already have and what the thing that we're working on will play with, how the thing that we're working on will play with it is it's very difficult for either AI to replace or for any other role to kind of do that, because even if designer can now generate high quality, for example, front-end code, there's still a gap between this and how do we want this to fit inside of the system. So I think the quicker we get to that realization that, I shouldn't be protective about this bigger bubble, I should figure out what is the small bubble for my role and what is the thing that I actually bring into the team to make sure that we're all successful.
So AI enables you to be a jack of all trades, but a master of none, essentially. So what are you in your role? What are you the master of to go into and on?
So we're gonna have that, big circle in the middle where everyone, engineer can write a very high quality product requirements document, for example, or designer can generate high quality code. Product manager can generate very high quality designs, but there's still gonna be that one step that's gonna be missing. We need AI doesn't have taste, as AI doesn't have the understanding of what it takes to make the design fit into what we already have, what it takes to make the design engaging.
Yeah.
It's just an average of what's already been done.
Yeah. And, hey, I'm curious about, like, as a head of engineering, the world is massively changing with all of the tools and the things that we discussed. What's top of mind for you right now? What problems are you thinking about when you're not running kickoff sessions and solution reviews internally?
I think this is this might be a very self-serving answer. Out of the things that we discussed, I feel like there's still a very untapped huge opportunity for for using all of that content that we generate throughout the process. And obviously, we do it all in Miro, but it doesn't matter where it's created. As you go through discovery, you have a lot of quotes, you have a lot of insights out of talking to customers, out of doing desk research. You have some sketches on early prototypes. If we go for definition, we kind of tighten those, but we constantly generate a lot of content. And if we look at the kind of the ways we work right now, we find ways of inserting AI to kind of accelerate some of those small steps. But we don't fully recognize how AI can change the whole process, or how AI can utilize all of that stuff that we create. And I think that the opportunity that feels the most physical to me right now, the thing that I'm very excited about is how can we get all of that stuff that we created, and rather than do what we used to, which is let's sit down in a room or join a video call and let's start talking about what we're going to build, how we're gonna break those big epics into smaller stories, and what is the right technical solution. Rather than having all of those as actual conversations between humans that usually result in not too many artifacts, how can we kind of connect those dots together? So, based on the Agile Manifesto, we started believing that writing documentation is not the right thing, is actually sitting together and then agreeing things together. And I think that's all great. But it means that we have all of this content that we created, we narrow it down to the right solution, and then we have this very small pipe that all of that needs to flow through, which is the human to human interaction, the conversation. And it's been working great. Don't get me wrong, this works fine. But we can speed it up a little bit by actually finding ways of connecting all of those artifacts to the delivery phase. So how can I, as an engineer, not have to go to my product manager and ask clarification again? How can I just query that content that's already been created? How can I be sure that this is the final version of a prototype? But actually, I realized that we can't build it this way, but there was a version before that looked a little bit differently. We can do this.
Yeah, the version 27 final,
Exactly.
capitalized final. Yeah.
So there's a huge opportunity to kind of connect all of those phases. And I think that's in preparation to the fact that as we embrace AI more and more, all of these phases are gonna get compacted. They're gonna get much smaller. I think that we do all of that preparation work because we're used to the fact that building stuff is expensive. It takes a lot of people and a lot of time to get software shipped. But as the code generation gets better and better, that is also gonna contract. It's gonna get the time is gonna get shorter. The investment required is gonna get shorter. So does it mean that we can now do less prioritization and just ship more stuff? Maybe.
You probably need more prioritization because you're going faster. If you get that right, it's probably more than a little acceleration. I think it's fundamentally changing the interaction of a team if you constantly build shared context as a team and then are able to bring that quicker into the actual code.
All of the organizations that work in principle on writing documents, we all know that it's not about the document that gets written. It's about the thinking process. They're the distillation of the stuff that we know into something that's important right now. And I feel like writing documents is one of the ways of forcing people to sit down with a blank screen and writing it down. But you can probably get the same quality, the same human level selection of what's important, what's not, working on existing content, working on different types of formats as well. It doesn't have to be just textual. visual or tabular data. All of that is useful and sometimes communicates the value much better than the resulting text.
Yeah. Okay. So as we're coming towards the end of this conversation, I'm curious to hear about your advice to people like junior, intermediate engineers, like where to go from here now with all of the changes in the industry. What do you tell them? That's
No, absolutely not. So junior people, I'm jealous. I'm so jealous.
really.
Well, I think that there's been throughout my career, there's been a lot of moments where things have changed and it's been different since we don't have to install our own servers to run a website anymore. We have the cloud. But I feel like the current wave of the things that are changing right now are much more impactful on what it means to be in this profession as a software engineer. Like I think you do need to get much more comfortable with the fact that it's no longer going to be who can very quickly adopt to a new language, new programming language, or who can quicker adopt a new technology in general. Like I feel that the value of an engineer is going to come from the things that we discussed earlier, from being able to think about a technical system, being able to decompose a challenge into smaller building blocks that make sense to be shipped, because you can always try to do it on a product layer, but it's much more difficult to know where the complexity lies, what's difficult, what's more difficult, what's less difficult, and maybe are there quick wins that we can achieve. I think that is all inevitably why software developers are called engineers, because they have that ability to kind of take a big problem, break it down to smaller problems that are much easier to solve. And the reason why I'm excited for junior engineers coming up right now is you still have an opportunity to gather all those skills, because probably throughout your education you've been taught the kind of programming languages and the actually how to work as a software engineer. But also because of lack of like real life experience of building software, it's going to be much easier to embrace the new AI tools, the code gen tools that I think for a lot of engineers who've been writing code for a long time, it feels very uncomfortable to kind of give up, because it feels like you need to, I know exactly what code I need to write, but now I need to figure out how to explain it to an LLM so it can generate the code that I want. I think there's a feeling of being precious about the code as an artifact. And I think with AI, we have the opportunity to do what a lot of people would call themselves product developers would do, which is the output is the software that users use, not the code that lives on a server. And I think that's what, with the current rate of improvement, I believe that's where we're going to get to. You prompt AI, it generates code. You might not agree with the code, but you see that the outcomes are the right ones, and that's the main thing that matters.
Yeah, it's a new, different take on outcome versus output. Like the output being the code, but the outcome is actually the working software. I feel like I've heard that before.
Obviously, this is there's so many things that can go wrong. There's so many things that we needed. That's not to say that if you're running a big software business, if you're running a bank, you do need that level of confidence in every single line of code. And I think we are figuring out. I think we're gonna get to a point where we can get that without actually having to read every single line of code, and hopefully we can basically treat the AI layer as an abstraction layer on top of code, just like no web software engineer will write assembly right now. We kind of accepted that. we potentially have an opportunity to do the same thing, but the change now is going to be not from low-level programming language to high-level programming language, but from programming language to talking about the value and the outcome that we expect users to be able to do.
I really like the positive outlook in this sort of time of uncertainty. You guys like, oh, you're actually jealous, like engineers don't even have to learn the fundamentals anymore. But I love how you approach it from a positive aspect, like the opportunity going forward. Last question. Giving advice to engineers is great, but we're looking at cross-functional teams. So what's your advice to product managers, designers, or the people around the team of how to better work in a cross-functional team?
Well, that's tricky. I think it's tricky not because of engineers. I think it's tricky for every single person, because what works for one team might not work for another team. What one designer might want to embrace as an opportunity, the other designer might feel very uncomfortable. I think we are all still figuring it out, and I think it's going to take a very long time before we get to a place where we can confidently say, this is how a cross-functional team should work in the age of AI.
Thank you again for your time, Lukasz. And thanks everyone for listening. I'm now really looking forward to the future conversations I'll have with product managers and designers to make the really cross-functional discussion about the product delivery lifecycle in the age of AI. Until next time, this is how we work.